The drive from Sudbury takes just under 4 hours, but I've done it so many times over the years that my hands know every curve on Highway 17 without being told. This time, though, my hands were shaking. I hadn't driven this route in 2 years. 2 years since I'd seen the blue-gray bungalow on Lakeview Crescent that my late husband and I had bought in 1987 for $112,000. When Sault Ste. Marie still felt like the kind of place where people put down roots and meant it. I'd left in the fall of 2022, 2 weeks after my husband's first hospitalization. Pancreatic cancer moves fast. Everyone says that, but you don't understand what fast means until you're the one watching it happen. I'd sublet my sister's spare room in Sudbury to be closer to the hospital, and my daughter had stayed behind in our house. Our house, the one her father and I had paid off in full 11 years ago. With her husband. His name was Travis. I should say that plainly. Travis Elwood. My daughter had married him 6 years before, in a small ceremony at the conservation area outside of town that had been very pretty and very cheap, both of which I'd taken as good signs at the time. I called my daughter every few days during those 2 years. The calls were fine, thin, but fine. She always said things were good, the house was good, Travis was keeping busy. When I asked what he was keeping busy with, she said this and that. When I asked if she was eating, she laughed a little too quickly. When I asked if she'd been out to see her friends, she had a good group of women from her years at the college, women who'd been in our house a dozen times for birthday dinners and Christmas drinks. She said she'd been tired lately. Just tired. My husband passed in March. My daughter did not come to the funeral. She sent me a message the morning of, "Mom, I'm so sorry. Travis has the car and I can't get a ride. I love you both so much." I read it twice, standing in the parking lot of the funeral home in my good black coat, and I put my phone back in my purse and I told myself I would deal with it later. I had a husband to bury. Later took me 7 more months. I don't know why it took that long. Grief does something to your sense of urgency. But in October, I woke up at 5 in the morning in my sister's spare room, stared at the ceiling and thought, something is wrong with my daughter and I have been ignoring it because I cannot bear one more wrong thing. And then I got up, made coffee, and started packing. I did not call ahead. I turned onto Lakeview Crescent just after 11 on a Wednesday morning. The silver maple in the front yard had dropped half its leaves and no one had raked them. That was the first thing I noticed. My husband had raked those leaves every October for 30 years. The second thing I noticed was the number of vehicles in the driveway. My daughter's old Civic, a pickup truck I didn't recognize, and a gray minivan with a cracked windshield and an out-of-province plate. New Brunswick. I sat in my rental car and looked at those plates for a long moment. I had a key on my ring, same as always. The lock hadn't been changed. The smell hit me before I'd even closed the door behind me. Not bad, exactly. Just not right. Cooking smells that weren't my daughter's cooking. A heavier scent, something like the inside of a hockey bag. And underneath it, faintly, the lemon oil my daughter used on the hardwood. Still there, buried under everything else. The entryway was cluttered with things that didn't belong to us. Work boots, enormous ones. A child's winter jacket on the floor beside the coat rack instead of hanging from it. A cardboard flat of beer cans, half empty. I stepped around them and moved down the hall. There were people in my kitchen. A woman I'd never seen sat at my kitchen table with a mug and her phone, still in her pajamas at 11 in the morning. She looked about 40, heavy-set, her hair pulled up in a messy bun. A teenage boy sat across from her, earbuds in, not eating the cereal in front of him, just staring at his phone. A smaller child, maybe 5 or 6, was sitting on the counter, on my counter, where I used to roll out pastry, eating something from a bag. None of them noticed me for a full 3 seconds. When the woman finally looked up, she startled so hard she sloshed coffee onto the table. "Jesus, who are you?" "I'm the woman whose kitchen you're sitting in." I kept my voice even. I've taught myself over 64 years to keep my voice even when what I want to do is the opposite. "I'm looking for my daughter." The woman's expression moved through surprise and into something more territorial. "She's at work. Where is she working?" "The Walmart on Great Northern." She said it like I should already know this, like it was obvious. My daughter had spent 6 years as an office administrator for a civil engineering firm. She'd been studying part-time to upgrade her project management certificate. The last I'd heard, she was applying for a senior coordinator position. "And you are?" I asked. "Travis's sister, Kelsey." She glanced at the children, then back at me. "Travis said we could stay here while Derek gets back on his feet. It's just temporary. How long have you been here?" A slight pause. Since June. June. It was October. And the van in the driveway, New Brunswick plates, that's Travis's parents. They're staying in the downstairs bedroom. She picked up her mug again, a gesture meant to signal that the conversation was over. You can talk to Travis if you want. He's downstairs. The downstairs bedroom. That had been my sewing room. I'd had a long-arm quilting frame set up in there since 2015. I didn't say that. I went to the top of the basement stairs and called down. Travis appeared at the bottom of the stairs. He was wearing a gaming headset around his neck and carrying an energy drink. He looked up at me with an expression I recognized, the particular look of a man who has been caught doing something he can't quite justify but has already prepared his justifications anyway. "Margaret," he said, "we weren't expecting you." "No, I imagine not. I came down 3 stairs, enough to see past him into what had been my sewing room." The long-arm frame was gone. In its place was a sectional sofa facing a very large television, currently paused on a video game. A man about Travis's age was asleep on one end of the sectional. On the floor, 2 sleeping bags, a pile of laundry, a mini-fridge I didn't own. "Where is my daughter, Travis?" "She's at work. I told Kelsey to tell you." She did. "I want to know why my daughter is working at Walmart." He shifted his weight, scratched the back of his neck. "Things have been tight. The engineering firm let people go during restructuring, and she had a hard time finding something else. The Walmart job is just to keep things steady while she looks." "When did she lose her job at the firm?" Another pause. "Longer this time. About 8 months ago. And you? Are you working?" "I'm between things right now. I had a situation with my last employer. It's complicated. I'm working through some stuff." He looked past me, up the stairs, like he was calculating something. "Listen, the setup here is temporary. Kelsey and Derek needed somewhere to land, and my dad's got some health stuff happening. They needed to be closer. It's a family thing. This is my family's house, Travis." He smiled, not warmly. "Technically, it's our house. Mine and—" "It is not your house," I said it quietly. "My husband and I bought this house. It is in my name. My name alone in a family trust because my husband was a careful man who had a good lawyer. You have no ownership claim here and you know it." I watched his face. Something flickered. He did know it. He'd known all along. "I'd like to see the rest of the house now." He stepped aside, not graciously. Upstairs, I moved room to room. Our bedroom, mine and my husband's, had been taken by Travis's parents. There was a cane propped against the nightstand, medication on the dresser, and the faint smell of menthol. My mother's quilt, the one I'd been given when she passed, was on the floor in the corner. I picked it up and folded it. The small guest room that had been my daughter's studio. She painted watercolors mostly, had been doing it since she was 12, was now a child's room. 2 small beds, toys everywhere, crayon marks on the wall near the window. None of my daughter's canvases anywhere visible. The bathroom, products I didn't recognize, a razor on the windowsill, no lavender soap, which my daughter had kept in there without fail for 15 years. I went back downstairs. Travis was in the kitchen now, talking in a low voice to his sister. They stopped when I came in. "Where is my daughter sleeping?" I asked. Kelsey looked at Travis. Travis looked at the counter. "We had some shuffling around," he said. "When everyone came," she offered. "The laundry room is actually decent sized. We set up the laundry room. It's not like my daughter is sleeping in the laundry room of her own home while your parents use our bedroom." He started to say something about it being temporary again. I held up one hand and he stopped. "She gets off at what time?" 4. "I'll wait." I went and sat in the living room. Travis's father was in the armchair. In my husband's armchair, the brown leather one he'd had for 20 years, that still had the slight indent on the left armrest where he used to rest his elbow, watching afternoon television. He looked at me when I came in. I looked at him. Neither of us spoke. I sat on the sofa and I waited. At 4:10, I heard a key in the lock. My daughter came through the door in her blue Walmart vest, still wearing her name tag, carrying a reusable bag that looked heavy. She'd always been slim, but she looked thin now in a way that was different. The kind of thin that isn't a choice. Her hair, which she'd always worn long and kept nicely, was pulled back in an elastic band and needed cutting. She had shadows under her eyes that hadn't been there 2 years ago. She saw me and the bag dropped. For a moment she just stood there. Then she said, "Mom," in a voice I hadn't heard since she was a child, the small frightened version she used when she'd hurt herself or had a nightmare, and I was across the room before I'd decided to move. She didn't hug me back at first. She went rigid, the way you do when you're not used to being touched kindly anymore. Then something gave way and she was clutching the back of my coat and shaking. Travis appeared in the doorway to the kitchen. "Hey, Bren!" "No," I said over my daughter's shoulder without turning around. "Not right now." I held her until she stopped shaking. Then I pulled back and looked at her face and made myself not cry, because she needed me steady more than she needed me falling apart. "Come outside with me," I said. "I have to start dinner. Travis's mom has her medication with food, and come outside with me." I picked up her bag from the floor and handed it to Travis as I passed him. "You can manage dinner." My daughter and I sat in the rental car in the driveway. October light was going flat and gold through the maple tree. She told me everything. It started the way these things seem to start, with something that sounded like love. Travis had been between jobs when they married. Not a concern. He was talented. Things would come together. They did for a while. Then they didn't. There'd been a pattern over the years, a job held for several months, then something going wrong that was always someone else's fault. A manager with it out for him, a company that didn't appreciate him, a situation that was complicated. When I moved to Sudbury, the money had already started to get tight. My daughter had been carrying most of their expenses for over a year. She hadn't told me because my husband was dying. Kelsey and her husband Derek had arrived in June, supposedly for 2 weeks. Travis had told my daughter it was the right thing to do, that family helped family, that she was being selfish for making him feel guilty about helping his sister. When she'd tried to raise the issue, he'd told her she was stressed and not thinking clearly. His parents arrived in August. They were supposed to stay in a hotel while they found something in town. They never looked for something in town. The shuffling had happened over about a week. Travis had said his parents needed the bedroom because of his father's back. He'd said it was temporary. He'd moved my daughter's painting things out of the studio without asking and put a child's bed in there. He'd told her the laundry room was actually quite comfortable, that he'd put down a mat, that she should think of it as her own space. She'd lost the firm job in February, not to restructuring, but because she'd been missing days. Not because she was sick, but because the household and its demands had expanded to fill every hour she wasn't at work, and sometimes the hours when she should have been. Travis had told her not to worry. He'd find something. He always said that. The Walmart job had come up in March. She'd taken it because the bills needed to be paid. She handed her paycheck to Travis. I had to ask her to repeat that. "You hand him your paycheck?" "He manages the finances," she said quietly. "He says it's easier. I have $40 a week for personal things." I looked out the windshield at the house, at the trucks in the driveway, at the maple tree and the unraked leaves. "Sweetheart," I said carefully, "do you know whose name is on the deed to this house?" She shook her head. "Travis handles. My name," I said. "My name and your father's name held in a family trust. We set it up in 2008 with our estate lawyer. You are the beneficiary of the trust, but the house cannot my written consent as trustee, which no one has asked for, which no one will ever get." I watched her face. "This house is not Travis's. It has never been Travis's. He has no legal right to be here, and neither does anyone he invited." She was quiet for a long time. He told me it was basically his. After we got married, he was wrong. I drove her to the Comfort Inn on Northern Avenue and checked us into a room. I ordered Swiss Chalet delivery because I knew she used to love it, and because I was not above using chicken and dipping sauce as comfort. While she ate, sitting cross-legged on the bed in the oversized hotel robe, some of the color came back to her face. Just a little. Enough. I called my lawyer after she fell asleep. His name is Paul Nguyen, and he has been handling our family's legal matters for 18 years. When I'd finished telling him the situation, there was the kind of pause that means a lawyer is calculating. "This is fairly clear-cut on the property side," he said. "The trust is airtight, they have no claim. The question is how cooperative they'll be when you serve notice." He paused again. "Has there been any financial abuse of your daughter that we should document?" "I believe so, yes. Then we should loop in a victim services worker before you go back to the house. And you should have a police officer with you when you serve the eviction notice. Formally." "I was planning to," I said. The next morning, I went to the trust company where the deed and estate documents were held and sat with an advisor while she printed copies of everything. The property tax records going back to 1987, the trust establishment document, the certificate of title, the letter from our estate lawyer confirming the terms. I have always been a very organized person. My late husband used to tease me about my filing system. I was grateful for it now. I went to the police station on March Street and asked to speak with someone about serving an eviction notice to unauthorized occupants. The officer I spoke with, Constable Bergeron, a woman about 40 with a no-nonsense manner that I found enormously reassuring, looked through the documents I'd brought and said, "How many people are in the house?" 8, I believe, including 2 children. She arranged for a community services contact for the children and said she'd accompany me that afternoon. Travis came to the door before Constable Bergeron had a chance to knock. He looked at her, looked at me, looked at the folder of documents under my arm. "I'm here to inform you," I said, "that you and all guests currently occupying this property are required to vacate within 48 hours. This is the formal notice." I handed him the envelope Paul had emailed and I'd printed at the hotel business center. "The property is held in trust under my name. You have no legal right to occupy it, and neither does anyone you've invited. If you have questions, you're welcome to contact a lawyer." He looked at Constable Bergeron. "She can't just do this." "She can," Constable Bergeron said pleasantly. "She has. I'd suggest you start making arrangements." His father appeared behind him, a heavy man moving carefully, leaning slightly to one side. He looked at me with an expression that I think was supposed to be intimidating. "You're throwing an old man with a bad back out on the street. I'm giving you 48 hours to make arrangements," I said, "which is more than you gave my daughter when you moved into her bedroom." Constable Bergeron stepped forward slightly. "Sir, I'd encourage everyone to cooperate here. The owner's claim is very clear. The alternative to voluntary compliance is a sheriff's order, and that process is less comfortable for everyone." We left them in the doorway. My daughter did not want to come back to watch. I understood. She waited at the hotel and I called her every few hours with updates. By evening, the New Brunswick minivan was gone. By the following morning, most of the trucks were gone too. I arrived at the house at the 48-hour mark with Constable Bergeron and found Travis and Kelsey still there, moving slowly, testing whether I'd be lenient. I was not lenient. Constable Bergeron spoke with them and they finished within the hour. The house was a disaster, not maliciously, or maybe maliciously, it was hard to know, but a disaster. The long-arm frame, which I later found out Travis had sold to someone on Facebook Marketplace for $200, was gone. My mother's quilt had a stain on it. I eventually got out with cold water and patience. The crayon marks in the little bedroom took 2 rounds of Magic Eraser and some touch-up paint. The kitchen needed a deep clean. The laundry room, where my daughter had been sleeping, had a damp smell and a broken overhead light that Travis hadn't bothered to replace. I replaced it myself that first afternoon, standing on a step stool with a new bulb from Canadian Tire. Paul filed a report with the Ontario Provincial Police Financial Crimes Unit about the controlled access to my daughter's wages, and the Victim Services connected her with a counselor who specialized in coercive financial control, which, I learned, is exactly what it sounds like and is taken seriously under Canadian law. She also connected with a legal aid family lawyer about the divorce. Travis had retained a lawyer of his own who sent a letter suggesting that my daughter had voluntarily agreed to all household arrangements and that the property matters were in dispute. Paul wrote back a letter that I did not read in full but that I understand was quite definitive. The divorce took 14 months. The financial abuse documentation. The paycheck arrangement, the $40 weekly allowance, the records she'd kept, the text messages she'd saved, the testimony of 2 of her former friends whom Travis had told her had stopped caring about her. They had not. They came to the house in December with food and sat with her for 4 hours. All of it was presented to the court. The settlement was in her favor in every material respect. Travis moved in with a friend from his gaming group in Timmins. The last I heard, from no source I went looking for, he was working at a warehouse there. I did not look further. We spent that first November putting the house back together. My daughter's painting things had been boxed and stored in the garage, not destroyed, which I was grateful for. We set up her studio again in the small bedroom in the same configuration she'd had it before, a proper table with her watercolors organized by color family. Good north-facing light. The portable speaker she liked, the one that connected to her phone so she could play her music while she worked. She painted on the second Saturday of November, the first time she'd painted in almost 2 years. It was just a small thing, a study of the maple tree in the yard, the last few leaves still hanging. She left it on the kitchen table, and I found it when I came downstairs in the morning, and I had to stand there for a minute before I could say anything. She went back to work at the civil engineering firm in January. Not the same firm, they genuinely downsized, but a different one, in town, slightly better title. She called me after her first day and said it felt strange and good, and that her desk plant had survived in someone else's office, and they'd returned it. I'm still at the house on Lakeview Crescent. I had been planning to eventually sell and move somewhere smaller, which had been mine and my husband's vague plan for the future. But that plan had been made when the future seemed like something happening to someone else. Now the future is happening to me in this house, and it turns out I don't mind. I sleep in my own room under my mother's quilt, with the window cracked slightly because I've always liked cold air when I sleep, which my husband tolerated for 31 years without complaint. My daughter has the studio back. She has her friends back. She has a therapist she likes, a woman who works out of an office on Queen Street East, and she goes every 2 weeks and comes home quieter in a way that seems good rather than shut down. Some days she's fine, some days she's not. We're learning the difference together. I raked the leaves in the yard on a Saturday in late October after Travis and his family had gone. My knees aren't what they were, and it took me most of the afternoon. My daughter came out partway through and took the rake without asking and finished the back section while I made tea. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. The maple tree looks the way it's always looked. The house looks the way it's supposed to look. Some things, if you're lucky and stubborn and willing to stand in a doorway and refuse to move, can be put back. My husband would have done the same if things had gone the other way. He was a quiet man and a gentle one, but he knew what mattered, and he did not let go of it easily. Neither do I.